Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, gentlemen, for your service and your testimony here today. I particularly appreciate both of you outlining the 5 strategic threats. I think that's very clear. I think the American people need to hear that. I think Senator Graham's comments about, or his question about how you think those are going to continue is also a very important testimony. You know, those threats and how to counter them include the aggression of Russia, which, as you know, Mr. Secretary, General Dunford, is not only Europe but in the Arctic. The ability to fight tonight with regard to North Korea, as you mentioned, the ability to continually rebalance our Asia-Pacific force posture in light of our challenges there with China. And in light of those serious threats, you may have seen that General Milley recently decided to reverse the Army's earlier decision made last year to disband the 425, which, as you know, Mr. Secretary, is the only airborne BCT in the entire Asia-Pacific, the strategic reserve that's very involved, that would be very involved in any kind of conflict in Korea, the only Arctic BCT that's trained to fight in mountains in extreme cold weather. And I've raised this issue a number of times in the committee over the last year. Recently, several combatant commanders mentioned that they were supportive specifically of what General Milley is trying to do, just given how critical these forces are. So, Mr. Secretary, do you support the Army's recommendation to more effectively posture its forces to best meet the national security threats that you outlined in your testimony, particularly as it relates to the 425 and what General Milley mentioned, I think, a couple weeks ago?
Well, Senator, thank you very much for your interest in this. I had the opportunity, which I appreciate the other day, to discuss this with you.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for your leadership with respect to the overall rebalance, and also for your state's hosting of forces that are so critical to so many scenarios of possible risk to the United States, as you already said. And with respect to the 425, I looked into that after our conversation. I've spoken to General Milley. If he makes that recommendation to me, I want you to know I'm going to approve that.
Thank you.
And I think that is an important part of our force posture in the Pacific, and I appreciate your calling my attention to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that as well. Let me get back to the rebalance issue that you mentioned. You know, a lot of us met with you last year in Shangri-La. I think it was, as you and I have talked about at the defense ministers' meeting out there, an important demonstration of U.S. legislative, executive, bipartisan support for that important strategy. And I think a number of us are planning on going again, so I think doing that again would be important to show a strong, across-the-board American resolve.
Thank you.
With regard to the implementation of the strategy that you laid out in your speech last year, which I thought was a very strong speech, you know, we've been asking, a number of us have written the President, have been encouraging, make sure we implement this policy on a routine basis. Now I'm talking about the South China Sea and our FONOPs there, not only on a routine basis but also with allies. But I'd like you to comment on, and both of you and General Dunford, on the opportunities that what's going on out there presents to the United States from a strategic perspective. And more specifically, as you know, Mr. Secretary, and you see it every time you go out into the region, many, many countries, because of what China is actually doing in the South China Sea, many countries are very much being more interested in working with us and drawing closer to the United States. Are there strategic opportunities that we should be looking at in terms of possible new basing, new training opportunities with the Marines in the Asia-Pacific, clarifying strategic relationships? I think there's a number of questions of what our strategic obligations are with regard to, say, a country like the Philippines. Looking at the next challenges, I know that there's some concern on this committee about the Scarborough Shoal, but what are the opportunities that we have? Because they seem to me, yeah, we have challenges there, but there's also, I think, enormous strategic opportunities Could you and General Dunford talk to those, particularly, the idea of new basing arrangements, the idea of new training arrangements? I think that there's a lot we could be doing. I'd like to hear both of your views on that.
Well, you're absolutely right, and I'll start and then I'll ask the chairman to chime in as well. There are opportunities. They're presenting themselves because countries in the region recognize that their region has had peace and stability for 70 years. And that is what has given them all the opportunity to rise. All the Asian miracles, beginning with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Southeast Asia, today India, and yes, China. All of that has occurred in an atmosphere of peace and stability, which they know we have played a pivotal part in. And so there is a greater demand for partnership with us. Whether you talk about basing, we are discussing with the Philippines right now, and you may know that their court passed an important milestone recently, which will allow us to do much more with the Philippines. We're doing more, and General Dunford had a key role in this with Australia, particularly our Marine rotations in Australia. Vietnam, who'd have thought decades ago, Vietnam, we're doing more with Vietnam. We thank you because we have the Maritime Security Initiative funding, which originated in discussions with you, Senator, and other members of the committee. We're grateful for that. We're using that funding. And the Japanese, as you probably know, have adjusted and amended their practices. They're looking to do more with us, joint patrolling, exercising, and so forth. India, I'll be in India in a short while, continuing to strengthen our relationship with that incredibly important country of 1 billion people and an essential geography and a very capable military that wants to partner with us as well. So we do all this in order to keep going the system that has brought prosperity to Asia. We're not seeking a conflict with China. It's not against anybody. It's part of keeping that system of security intact, and we intend to do it. That's what the rebalance is about. But the good news, as you say, is that we're popular there. People want to work with us. Let me turn it over to the chairman.
Senator, I guess I'd emphasize what you and the Secretary have alluded to. I've made 2 trips to the region since I've been in my current assignment, and I would tell you that the desire for people to develop stronger bilateral relationships with the United States has probably never been greater, and frankly, with our partners, particularly those with whom we have a treaty obligation, our relationship has probably never been deeper. But when you talk about opportunities, the one thing that we haven't necessarily had in the past are multilateral relationships and interoperability associated with conducting everything from humanitarian assistance operations to other operations that may be required in the region, or that multilateralism in and of itself serving as a deterrent to those who might want to be destabilizing in the region. So there's an opportunity. And from those relationships, then comes the one issue we haven't talked about in great detail is opportunities for training. Because in the Pacific, joint training is required to maintain readiness, and we're always looking for opportunities to identify training areas where we can maintain readiness even as we conduct the exercises and engagements with our partners. And I think the willingness of our partners to afford us the opportunity to train in their countries, continue to maintain proficiency with live fire, aviation capabilities, those kinds of things, I think will only increase in the future. And there's a number of places where we're in contact. Secretary's staff is in contact with a number of countries to enhance our training opportunities, and as the Secretary spoke about, our actual basing opportunities in the region. So I would agree with you. I think a view of the common challenges in the Pacific has brought us together in a very positive way and has created all the opportunities you've alluded to.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.